Hey, this is James, and in this video, I'll be walking you through one of my Oracle card deck creations, and that is the Everyday Angel Oracle. So, stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this viewer-requested video. I am so happy to have you here with me. So this video is a follow-up to my deck walkthrough of my latest Oracle card creation, which is Neophyte. And in that video, I shared that I had made an angel card deck previous to Neophyte, and that I made it for myself, so I have the one and only copy. But if people wanted to see it, I would be more than happy to do a video walkthrough of that particular deck, and a number of you took me up on that offer, so here we are. But before I get into showing you the cards, I thought it only right and fair, because I've done it with all the other decks that I have shown or showcased up to this point, that I would offer a little bit about the story as to how the deck came into being. So the time frame for this deck falls between July and September of this year, 2020, because it centers on the release of Kyle Gray's Angel Guide Oracle. And that is Kyle Gray's fourth deck. And so for those of you who may not even know who Kyle Gray is, he is a young man who works with the angels, and he writes a number of books on angels, and he also has created a number of decks about the angels. And so I am on his email newsletter list, and so I get notified whenever something new is going on in his world with his work. And so I was notified in July that the Angel Guide Oracle was set to be released on September the 1st. And it was available for pre-order. So I went ahead and pre-ordered it. And then as the date got closer to it being available to the public, being launched, he started teasing out through his Monday message images from the deck. So I remember getting the very first one, because I even remember the name of the card. The name of the card was Manifestation. So as I was looking at the email, reading the email and looking at the image, I had this thought to myself: if I were going to make my own deck, an angel card deck, what would mine look like? And so that was the question, and in that moment it set the stage for my deck to come into being, because I was inspired in that moment. So I wanted this particular deck to focus on guardian angels, because when I worked with angels in my very first deck, Oracle of Himm, most of the angels that are in that deck were archangels. And so every now and again I have this thought that my focus on archangels is giving my guardian angels kind of short shrift. Even though there was one card in my Oracle of Himm deck called the Guardian Angel card, I felt like I wanted to kind of expand on that. So again, the theme or the concept was guardian angels in particular. And so going back to my very first deck, when I looked at the imagery in it, because I kind of wanted it to complement that deck, that very first deck, when I was looking at the images that I had of angels were angel statues. And so that was a jumping off point in terms of imagery that I wanted for my personal deck, as I wanted all the angels to be depicted as statues, because I just have a love for angel statues, have always had a love for angel statues. So what I did was I went to my resource of choice, which is Pixabay, and I scoured the site for images of angel statues. And I had a number of images to go through, because when I put in the search term, and I put in angel statues, I believe was the search term I put in, 14 pages of images came up. And so I did my due diligence. I went through every single page, not once but twice, to make sure I didn't miss any images that kind of spoke to me or resonated with me. And so after I went through the 14 pages of images, I gathered what I had, and then I started whittling them down. And even with that process, I wound up having, I think there's 83 cards in the deck. So I noticed that when I make Oracle card decks, I go all in. And so I usually go twice the number of maybe more mass market products that are out there, usually the standard is between 44 and 50 cards. Well, I went way beyond that. So again, there's 83 cards in the deck, and I really love how this particular deck came out, because as I was working on it, it helped refine my creative process. And so there's a couple of things I want to say about that. So this was actually the first deck that I decided that I was going to change the size from tarot card size, which had been the standard for my first 3 decks, and I was going to go oracle card size. So I did that. That was the first thing. And then I realized that I wanted to incorporate borders into the mix, and so the cards have borders, much like the Neophyte deck, right? So the Neophyte deck actually benefited from me making this particular deck, because it, again, helped me refine my process, and I love how the Neophyte deck came out. So it helped me refine the process in the sense that there's borders, and I learned about putting in the proportion of the images correctly, which I didn't do with my first deck, because I stretched the images to kind of get them to fit the card. So I decided I was going to go more landscape with some, so I did that. It was just a very fun process, but like I said, it helped me refine that creative process. And so going forward, this would be how I would make any deck that I feel inspired to create now, although in the moment that I'm sitting here filming this video, I actually feel like I'm quite complete with that, but, you know, nothing's guaranteed. Or, you know, there could be another deck that I'm inspired to create as soon as the camera goes off here, so who knows. But right now in the moment, I'm feeling complete with that. So that's actually how the deck came into be. I have Kyle Gray and his Angel Guide Oracle to thank for that moment of inspiration. And so I'm feeling like that's what I need to say about the deck and how it came into be at this moment. So I'm going to now move closer to the table and allow you to see all the cards. So let's get to it. And here we are with the Everyday Angel Oracle deck on the table. And first up is the title card that I created. I always like having a title card for each deck that I work with, whether it's just for me personally or it's going to be offered to others at some point in the future. So this one has the title, Everyday Angel Oracle. It says a deck by yours truly, James and Mitchell, with the year on the bottom, 2020, and my website address. And the image on the card doesn't appear as an image on one of the cards in the deck. But I like the image so much, I still wanted to include it, so I saved it for the title card. So that is the title card. Oh, before I go on, these are the card backs. And so one of the themes of the deck deals with statues, angel statues. And so I like that for the card backs. Okay, as I said in the opener, this is a pretty chunky deck, so it is about 83 cards. So let's go through the cards. I'll try to go through the cards pretty quickly without giving too much commentary on each card unless I feel led and guided. Okay, so the first card is Abundance, and I have them in alphabetical order. I don't number my cards, but I do like putting them in alphabetical order when I do walkthroughs. So that's Abundance. This card is about reaping a harvest, harvesting, as well as the idea about, having an abundant mindset or a prosperity consciousness. But it centers on two things. It centers on the universal law of sowing and reaping, and also the idea of separating the wheat from the chaff. So Abundance. Next up is Affection. This card is about demonstrations of love and caring for other people. Well, this is an important card in the deck for me. So this card is Amelia. And so Amelia is based on a dream that I had where an angel actually named Amelia came to me. She told me her name was Amelia. And so when I woke up from the dream, I looked up the meaning of Amelia, and one of its meanings is work. And so I have designated Amelia as my work angel. So whenever I'm having an issue or a challenge or a concern regarding my work, and so that could be the work that I go out in the world to do, because I do work 2 jobs at the moment, but also the work that I do in my business. And so when I'm feeling challenged, I call on Amelia to assist me in that area. So that's Amelia. Next up is I have a few Archangel cards in the deck that are relative to my personal experience. And so the first you will recognize as Cassiel from my Oracle of Himm deck. I just changed the name to Archangel Cassiel, and I changed the image a little bit by widening it out. But Archangel Cassiel is a significant archangel to me because I had a visitation from this particular angel while experiencing Reiki. And so when I was in the process of creating this deck, I wanted Cassiel in it, and when it turns up, it's a reminder for me to work more closely with this angel, given the fact that, like Amelia, this angel came to visit me. So that's Archangel Cassiel. Next up is another archangel, and this is Archangel Metatron, my beloved Archangel Metatron. If you're no stranger to my videos, you've heard me talk about my connection to Archangel Metatron before. And so Metatron is an important presence in my spiritual life. And so Metatron is actually in every one of my decks in some shape, form, or fashion. But I love how this particular card came out, because I incorporated, different elements to get the final image. So I just love how this one came out. And so that's my beloved Archangel Metatron. Next up is Archangel Michael. You can't have a deck that features or centers on guardian angels without having the chief guardian angel in the deck, right? Archangel Michael is the chief guardian angel, the chief protector angel. Right? And again, like Archangel Metatron, I love how this particular image came out. I actually had quite a challenge finding the right and perfect Archangel Michael image. And so I'm very pleased with this one, but this one took a little bit of time to create. So that's Archangel Michael. Next we have awareness. And so you'll see, just as I talked about in my deck walkthrough of Neophyte, this deck came before it. So this helped refine my deck creating process to some degree, because this is where I got to work on the idea of the borders, and each border being a different size, depending on the image and how much of it I wanted to keep into the card. But this is where I got to work on that. And so since I'm talking about the border is a black paisley background. I didn't want just a solid background. I wanted something with some dimension to it, for lack of a better word. And so I centered, came up with, or decided on this black paisley background, and I just love it. So that's awareness. And I should say, as I'm going on, this also is the first deck, or was the first deck, that I decided to go with the cards being oracle card sized. All the decks up to this point were tarot card size, and so the size of the cards, they are 3.5 by 5. And so I just love it. And actually going forward, I was so loved how the size worked in this deck that I redid my Oracle of Himm. I changed it to Oracle card size, and then of course the Neophyte deck is Oracle card size. But it was because I was very, very pleased with how the Oracle card size worked in this particular deck. Okay, so now the card that I'm holding is Beauty. Next card is Calling or Purpose. And so this could be a representation of Archangel Gabriel. Next we have Charity. This is about acts of kindness, being charitable, things like that. Next is child. And then we have the Christ consciousness card. And so I will say, as I'm holding this card, I come from a Christian background. I call myself a Christian metaphysician now in my Christian journey. So a lot of the cards may have a Christian vibe or feel. And if that's the case, it's just representative of my spiritual background. And so what I love about this image when I found it is that it's an image of Christ the Redeemer, but it has angel wings on it. And so it had to make it into the deck. So that's Christ consciousness. Next is comfort. And what I love about the image, certain image, I can imagine like the angels are saying something. In this particular case, I feel like the angels are saying to the one, like, there, it's going to be okay. I'm here. I've got you. Next is communication. Communion. Consider your actions. I just love the simplicity of just like the image really centering on the hand. Contemplation. Cross to bear. Dark night. And I was thinking dark night of the soul with this. And also the story in Christian scripture where Jacob is wrestling with the angel. Daydream. Divine timing. Emergence. I love this image. Ennui, which is boredom. And I wanted to have challenging cards in it because angel cards, in my experience, tend to be all positive or all light. And I understand the idea that angels vibrate at a higher frequency. So they are kind of vibrating above our human concerns, but I still wanted them in the deck. And so you can clearly see that the angel does look like he or she is discontented or dissatisfied or bored. And a lot of the angel statue images that I found convey some kind of emotion, which I thought was fantastic. So that's ennui. Next up is expectation. Faith. So you might see with this card, it has a connection to charity, because I was thinking about the virtues. Father. And what I loved about this image when I found it is that the man and the child in the center of the card are surrounded by angels. So you could think of, in a spiritual sense, divine father, divine masculine. Or this can be about your relationship to your physical father or male authority figures. Next up, this was a fun card, Friends to the End. So this is like the ride or die card. You know, that person who goes with you through everything. Going directly to the source is the next one, and I love this image. With the angel pointing up, I always think of it as, you know, going directly to headquarters. Next up is gratitude. And grief, here we go. This is the mourning angel, I believe is the name of it. But it clearly conveys, you know, mourning and grief. Next is healing. And this was intentional. I love the image. The image has a shade of green, and then I found a background to superimpose the foreground over it. And the feel is, you know, green is a healing color, represents the heart chakra, so that's what I was going for in this image. I love how it came out. Next up is honor. And here's the third virtue card. This is hope. So right now we've seen faith, hope, and charity. There's one more. Oh, I love this one too. This is Infancy. And so this card represents like the infancy stage of development, if it doesn't represent an actual infant. And also inner child work. You know, healing your inner child. And I love that because of the tear on the child's face or the baby's face. Next up is Inner Dominion. This is my Going Within card. Again, because I come from a Christian background, we talk about the kingdom of heaven is within. Next is Inspiration. Oops, my card slipped out. I'll get that in a moment, but this is Inspiration. Okay, let's see. Okay, so here we have the Intercessor card. That's a card that fell down. Next is Lean on Your Angels. You know, when it comes to our guardian angels want us to lean on them for support and for help. So that's Lean on Your Angels. Next is Listen. You know, our angels are communicating with us, but are we listening? That was my thought for this card. That's the gist of the card. Next up is Looking Ahead. And conversely, Looking Back. You know, sometimes we have to look back. Sometimes we have to do a review of the past, right? To see where maybe we have gotten off path or what we have learned. So that's Looking Back. Next up, I have two of these cards. There are a few cards in the deck where I have more than one. This is the first one. So this is Love. Right. And then I have an alternate version of that. Next up is Magic. Majesty. So there's lots of cards that talk about, crowning achievements. Honor was the first one with the laurel wreath. So this is kind of a similar thing, but it's kind of acknowledging your sovereignty. But it's also a pun on the crown chakra with the crown. And so like the angels want to have us receive their guidance and direction. And for me personally, it comes through my crown chakra. So that was my thought with this card. This is Majesty. Next up is Make a Wish. And because it's a theme that I have in all my decks, this is a man card. So it represents a male seeker. Since this is my personal deck, this card represents me. And I went with the statue David, because keeping with the idea that all the images are statues, I went with this one. So this is the man card. And because of Lenormand, I love having an additional man card. So if I was doing a relationship between myself and another man, it doesn't necessarily have to be of the romantic variety. I mean, I could do a reading on a same-sex couple, but this could be like me and my brother, or me and a friend, or me and a peer, any other kind of male relationship. So I might put these two cards on opposite ends of a line and then draw cards in between to talk about the relationship between myself and this other man. So that is my alternative man card. And again, it's just another angle of David. Next up is the Mother card. So this is a representation of Mother Mary, the Queen of the Angels. And so much like the Father card, this can also represent the Divine Feminine, or it could represent a mother or some other maternal type figure, or a female authority figure. But my intention when I created the card, or went looking for the image, I should say, for the card, I had Mother Mary in mind because she's the Queen of the Angels. Next up is Music. Nature. And so the obvious would be, taking time out to be in nature or connecting with nature. But because of the bird on the hand, I also think about training. So that would be, this card can represent teaching and training, instruction. But it can also represent animal communication. So that's nature. Notice the signs. I love this image. So notice the signs would be the signs that the angels bring to us to let us know about their presence, or to respond to a petition that we have put out there. A petition, a request, a prayer. And so once we do that, we have to pay attention to the signs that the angels have answered that petition, that request, that prayer. So let's notice the signs. Next up we have On the Lookout, and this is a little bit of a fun card. When I found this image, I really wanted to use it. And so for me, when I look at it, it's like the one angel on the right of the card is looking to the other angel and going, "Hey, do you see that?" And he goes, and the other one goes, "What? Where?" And he's looking ahead. I had that like internal conversation in my head when I looked at the image. So because of the fun conversation I was having with myself, I'm like, I want this card to be, or this image to be in the deck as a card. So I call it On the Lookout. Next up we have On Top of the World. open to receive. And this could be, open to receiving all things. In law of attraction speak, for me, this is the process of allowing. Right? Being in a state of receptivity. Next is perspective. And the message of this card, based on the visual, is about being willing to look at something from all different angles. Which is why the picture is on an angle. But I love how that one came out. That's perspective. Next up is power. Of course, this is about stepping into your power, reclaiming your power. And here we have the prayer card. And here we have the last of the virtue cards. This is prudence. And what I love about it, when I created the image, I noticed that the statue appeared to be looking backwards. So I created the background as if the light was coming from behind the angel, and it got the angel's attention. So sometimes this card can literally mean like, hold up, wait a minute. You know how you are driving and you see a yellow light? A yellow light means like to start slowing down. And so that was the idea with the color yellow light being behind the angel. So for me, when I pull this card for myself, it sometimes can literally represent like, hold up, wait a minute. Next is rest. And here we have Sacred Heart. And so if you come from a spiritual tradition where this is an actual thing, so this could be about like, doing a Sacred Heart meditation. But for me, I love the image because of the finger touching the heart. So this is about getting in touch with your feelings, getting in touch with your emotions. Could represent the heart chakra. Healing the heart. Things like that. Next is secret. And I just love the image. Sometimes this card can be about, knowing when to share something and knowing when to keep it to yourself. And I really love this image. To me, when I found it, was very evocative. And so this is seeing beyond the veil. So in spiritual circles, metaphysical circles, maybe even some New Age circles, we talked about this idea about having a veil. People being born with the veil or the veil being removed. So for me, this is like the clairvoyance card in the deck. So that's seeing beyond the veil. And then we have, next up, we have seeing the light. So this card is about illumination. It's about a realization. It's about an epiphany, an aha. And then we have sensitivity. This is another type of intuition card. Then we have serenity. Next up is smell the roses. I love how that came out. Another one I like how it came out is standing by. So this card represents the idea that your angels are standing by there, waiting in the wings for you to call on them to assist you, right? In keeping with the idea that the angels cannot act on our behalf unless we invoke them, which is invite them in to work and assist with us. So that is standing by. This is steward. Study and learning. Success. And this image had to be in the deck just because I love it so much. I love the expression on this angel's face. Take a step. This is like the charity card and consider your actions. More like consider your actions, because the consider your actions card had a hand and this has a foot. You know, I just love the idea that some of these cards were like extreme close-ups of a certain part of a statue. So this is about like taking a step, taking one step, moving forward. I always say, as a coach, I always ask people, like, what's the one step you'd be willing to make to move forward in whatever the situation is? Next up is to serve and protect. So I love the image, and so this keeps with the idea of guardian angels. You know, the angels watching over us and protecting us. Next up is unknown. Up against a wall. I love the image. So this represents those moments in life where we feel like our back is up against the wall. You know, it could also be about, walls can represent limitation and restriction, so it's about maybe facing some kind of limitation or restriction, with the help of our angels, of course. Next up is victory. So this is in alignment with the honor card and the majesty card, right? Because they talk about like a crowning achievement. But I love the image about the angel placing the wreath on the man's head. And so again, for me, I can feel my angels through my crown chakra. So the visual made me think of that. So that's victory. Next up is waiting. You know, what I love about the image is that this card is about, of course, being patient. You know, but we get to choose how we're going to express being patient. Are we going to do it with ease? Or are we going to do it from a place of frustration and impatience? Right? We get to choose. So that's waiting. Next up is wisdom. When I saw this image, it made me think of Athena, the goddess of wisdom from Greek mythology. We're getting closer to the end. So now, just like we had a man card, I have a woman card. And so the other thing about it is that I have it where the man and the woman are facing in the same direction. Right? So if you remember, my man card was facing to the right and she's facing to the left. And the same thing, if I wanted to do a relationship on myself with another woman, or with a woman, I should say, not another woman, but a woman, then I would put my card and this card on opposite ends and draw some cards in between to talk about the relationship between us. So that's the woman card. And then I had an alternate. So this is the alternate woman card. And this could be about maybe gaining insight into a relationship with two women, because each woman card is facing in the same direction, you know, if you put them next to each other. And this is Working Your Light. So I love this card. This card for me is the light worker card in my deck. So it talks about, on some level, what is your light, meaning what is your spiritual gift, talent, or ability, and are you working with it or working to develop it? And then the other thing about working your light is about shining your light. Now, as far as the image goes, this is a close-up of David by Michelangelo. And so it's a nice carryover to, or from, the man card in the deck. Right, centering on the idea about your light. So that's working your light. Next up we have worry. So again, remember I said I wanted some cards to reflect the more challenging either thoughts or feelings that we experience in this thing we call life. And there are moments where we do worry, or at least I shouldn't say we as a collective. I know there are moments when I worry, right? Because this is about my personal deck. So there are moments when I worry. So when I saw the image, I'm like, yeah. But the other thing about the image, it makes me think of two things. The first thing is like, on some level, I know my angels must do face palms because of the things that I do. And, I imagine like this angel's like face palming going like, oh, I can't believe he did that again. Right? So that's one thing. And then, in something else, the hand is covering the third eye. So it makes me feel like doing third eye work. Working with your third eye. Caring for your third eye, either, in terms of activating it, like your third eye is becoming open, or that you are working on decalcifying your pineal gland, which is something I personally engage in. So that is worry. And then the last card in the deck is writing. So this can represent all forms of written communication. But it can also represent the act of writing a book or keeping a journal. So that is the final card in the deck. And that brings my walkthrough of the Everyday Angel Oracle to a close. And there you have it. That is my Everyday Angel Oracle card deck in all its wondrous glory. I am so happy with how this deck came out, as I said in the opener. It holds a special place in my heart because it helped refine my deck making process. So for those of you who asked to see the deck, I hope that you enjoyed the cards, and I would love to hear your thoughts about the deck and how it turned out. So this is James Himm Mitchell. I'm signing off. Thank you so much for joining me for this video, and I look forward to sharing this space with you again in our next video together. So until then, take care and have a wonderful day.